Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a very serious and complex topic that is shaking the foundations of global politics. Around the world, there are countries that feel their interests are being threatened by the United States and Israel. This has led to a growing conversation about forming alliances or united fronts against what they see as American and Israeli dominance. For decades, the United States has been the most powerful nation on Earth, influencing global trade, military alliances, and international organizations. Israel, a close ally of the U.S., has also been at the center of major conflicts in the Middle East. While Washington and Tel Aviv claim they are working to maintain peace and stability, many countries see their actions as aggressive, unfair, or destabilizing. In recent years, we have seen a new level of frustration coming from nations that are tired of sanctions, military interventions, and political pressure. These countries believe that Washington uses its power to punish governments that refuse to follow its lead, while rewarding those that cooperate. This has fueled resentment and inspired talks of building stronger alliances to resist what they see as global bullying. Russia has been one of the most vocal opponents of U.S. foreign policy. Moscow has repeatedly criticized Washington for interfering in other countries' internal affairs and using sanctions as a tool of coercion. Since the war in Ukraine began, Russia's confrontation with the West has only grown more intense, and it has pushed Moscow to seek stronger ties with nations that share its views. China has also taken a more assertive stance against the US-led world order. Beijing has been building its own alliances through trade, infrastructure investment, and diplomacy. It believes that the current system is too heavily tilted in favor of the West and wants to reshape it into one where developing countries have a stronger voice. This goal often aligns with the interests of nations that feel marginalized by U.S. and Israeli policies. Iran is another major player in this emerging alignment. Tehran has long opposed both Washington and Tel Aviv, accusing them of fueling instability in the Middle East. Decades of sanctions have hurt Iran's economy, but they have not broken its resolve. Instead, Iran has worked to strengthen partnerships with countries like Russia and China, as well as with regional allies who share its vision of resisting Western influence. Even countries that are not directly in conflict with the United States are starting to question its actions. Many African nations, for example, have expressed frustration with the way global institutions are structured. They argue that decisions about their future are too often made in Washington or European capitals without considering their own priorities. This has led some African leaders to explore closer cooperation with powers like China and Russia. The Middle East has been a key battleground for these rivalries. Several Arab states have historically been close partners of the U.S., but there is also a strong wave of public opinion that wants to see more independence from Washington's influence. The recent conflicts in Gaza and the West Bank have triggered fresh anger in many parts of the Muslim world, with protests demanding that their governments take a stronger stand against Israel. Turkey has been navigating a careful path between the West and its own ambitions. While it is still a member of NATO, Ankara has clashed with Washington on issues like Syria, weapons deals, and regional strategy. Turkey has shown interest in cooperating with Russia and Iran in certain areas, signaling that it may be willing to challenge U.S. influence when it feels its interests are at stake. Latin America is another region where voices of dissent are growing louder. Countries like Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua have long resisted U.S. policies, but now even larger economies like Brazil and Argentina are engaging in more independent foreign policy choices. The idea of a multipolar world where no single country dominates is gaining popularity. What is driving all of this is a sense that the old system no longer works for everyone. The US and Israel still have enormous power, but that power is being challenged more openly than ever before. Technology, trade, and new security partnerships are giving smaller nations tools to resist pressure. This has led to a slow but noticeable shift in the balance of global power. This does not mean that all these countries are forming a single unified bloc. They have different interests, ideologies, and goals, but there is a shared desire to reduce US and Israeli influence over their decisions. This has led to cooperation on specific issues, like voting together at the United Nations, creating new financial systems to bypass the US dollar, and holding joint military drills. The BRICS group Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa has become a symbol of this new push. It has recently expanded to include more members, and it has been discussing ways to create alternatives to Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and World Bank. If these efforts succeed, they could dramatically change the way global finance and trade operate. One of the most significant developments has been the growth of military cooperation among these nations. Russia and China have held joint naval exercises. Iran has hosted war games with its allies. Even countries that are not traditional partners are exploring security agreements that could help them stand up to outside pressure. For the US and Israel, this is a worrying trend. They argue that their policies are necessary to protect freedom, democracy, and security. They warn that allowing authoritarian powers to gain more influence would make the world more dangerous. However, critics say that this is just an excuse to maintain their dominance and keep other nations dependent. The situation is becoming more complicated as global crises continue to unfold. The wars in Ukraine and Gaza, tensions in the South China Sea, and disputes over energy resources are all connected to this larger power struggle. Each conflict creates new alliances, new rivalries, and new risks. The danger is that if these tensions are not managed carefully, they could lead to a larger confrontation. Some experts warn that the world is entering a new Cold War, but this time, it is not just between two superpowers. Instead, there are many players, each with its own agenda, competing for influence. For ordinary people, this can be confusing and frightening. Economic instability, rising energy prices, and the threat of war affect everyone. Many people are calling for diplomacy and dialogue instead of confrontation. They argue that the world needs cooperation, not division, to deal with shared challenges like climate change, poverty, and pandemics. Still, the reality is that power politics has always been part of human history. Nations will continue to look for ways to protect their interests, whether through alliances or rivalries. The growing talk of uniting against the US and Israel is just the latest chapter in this ongoing story. As this situation evolves, we will likely see more dramatic announcements, more summits, and more efforts to reshape the global system. Whether this leads to a fairer and more balanced world, or to more conflict and instability, will depend on the choices made by leaders in the months and years ahead. One thing is clear: the world is no longer as simple as it was in the past. The dominance of one or two powers is giving way to a more complex and unpredictable order. This means that every decision matters, and every alliance can change the course of events. We will continue to watch these developments closely, analyzing what they mean for global peace, security, and the future of international relations. If these countries do succeed in forming a united front, it could mark the beginning of a completely new era in world politics, one that will affect us all.